Charities in Jersey have had a tough few years, first the pandemic and then rising costs. But the spirit of giving hasn't gone away. Islanders are still finding ways to support the causes they care about through donations, volunteering and sharing their skills. I'm Jodie Yatram, and in this Bailiwick Podcast episode, brought to you in partnership with the Association of Jersey Charities, we explore how that spirit of giving is evolving and why it still matters.
So my name's Bex Harris. I've been with Race Nation Sports Giving for around 4 years now. We've recently launched our brand new platform, Jersey Giving, which is a Jersey specific fundraising platform to help all of the charities on the island raise more funds more easily for less. It's been an incredible launch. Had lots of engagement with the charity sector and really excited about how the next few months are going to go.
Hi, my name's Alan Lapavu. I'm the charity manager for the Bode Foundation. About 10 years ago, we set up volunteer.je to link charities and non-profit organisations with potential volunteers. Other than that, I'm responsible for ensuring that the money we donate is spent properly and wisely. And we also run a children's camp during the summer holidays, Easter holidays, and certain weekends throughout the year for children who have been referred by teachers and other professionals.
I'm Robert Surcouf. I'm the recently appointed chair of the Association of Jersey Charities, and put myths aside, the Association of Jersey Charities, the AJC, is not a regulator or any element of that. We're here to, and have been since 1971, as advocates for the charitable sector. We provide training and support. We do also receive part of the lottery funding, which we distribute to charities, and we've also had in the past, and hopefully more in the future, benefactors who've trusted us with funds that we distribute to the sector. But we're very much about supporting all charities within the island. Obviously, we're a member-led organisation, so charities become members, but we also do represent the interests of non-members. We're focused on the support and development of the sector.
And just to set the scene, can you tell us a little bit about what things are like for charities at the moment?
I think we're in a recovery phase. I know it's hard to still be using the sort of pandemic words, but that had such a hit for nearly 2 years. A large amount of fundraising dropped off a cliff. But the demands for the charities for support actually increased. And we then went from that into a bit of a perfect storm with a cost of living crisis that meant not everybody has as much to give. So it's been really difficult, and a lot of charities have used up a large amount of their reserves and are now trying to work out how they can deliver more with less money, but also trying to work out ways that they can fundraise and also attract volunteers, because, you know, this island has an incredible history of people giving and being very generous, both in terms of money and of their time, whether that's attending social events and digging in for a raffle to doing sponsored walks or mud runs and marathons. It's huge in that position. But then there's a huge amount of people who also volunteer. And the value of people's time is often a multiple many times over compared to what they perhaps would give. So it's all so important. But it has been tough, but we're seeing some serious green roots, and in particular with support from organisations who are really trying to assist. So we've got the Jersey Giving that Barry Betts could speak about, and that's going to make a huge difference. And Volunteer J has been a great platform. So I think probably hand over a little bit to both Bex and Alan of what your thoughts are about the sector and how it's developing.
Yes, completely. So coming from with the Race Nation Sports Giving, the registration and fundraising side, we've definitely seen since the pandemic that entries into events have now really started to increase over the last year or two. People are really getting into it, really enthusiastic, and the fundraising has increased with it. With the separation of the Jersey Giving platform now, I think that's going to really empower people to, whether they may still be doing a marathon or a walk or something sporty, but now they may also be doing a bake-off or a raffle or anything like that, where it doesn't necessarily mean it's a sports-related activity. They can still go in, set up a jersey giving page, and be really confident that that money is being raised here to stay here and is helping that jersey charity. I think that compared to the UK, we do see very, very generous fundraising in Jersey. I do think the island is incredibly generous, and the enthusiasm that people have for these events and for raising funds for things they care about it's definitely so clear to see within the community. And I think that in the next couple of years, it's really going to grow. And yeah, I feel really positive about how it's going.
A huge benefit on having now this Jersey giving page. Firstly, I think some of the resources that charities were using for fundraising often had inbuilt fees that really put some people off just at that point of going, well, what's going on here in the sort of slide of how much to charge. And we were seeing comments on that. Plus, this is structured specifically for jerseys. So where people make a larger donation, £50 or above, we've got the ability to increase their donation, in effect, by 25% by clawing back the tax. So it's wonderful that a team has developed this position to help those who want to fundraise, who want to do events, small or large, to have that functionality on island, plus those added benefits. And it is important because charities do need this funding to carry on the hard work. And they need to come up with exciting events. And the Muddy Fun Run, we were talking about that just before we came in, which the Lion Club's run. They had over 750 people come out and take that event, and lots coming going, never done it before, what a fun event. We'll come and do more. And this is the position that we've got a very vibrant sector, and we've got to find things that people find interesting. But I think the same true is in terms of I'll turn to Alan now, in terms of volunteering and the functionality of how we can allow people to volunteer more easily.
Yeah, thanks, Robert. It's quite true that in Jersey we have this massive pool of volunteers, and we're not actually quite sure how many people are volunteering the island. I think it's hugely underestimated. And being able to measure that value to Jersey is almost impossible. People have tried, but it does most definitely sit in the tens, possibly hundreds of millions of pounds a year, just from people giving up their time. I'll give you an example. As a life-saving club over here, and they did a little bit of work between all the volunteer hours in the club. It was equivalent to 3.5 full-time members of staff. Just one little sports club. You can multiply that across the sports sector in Jersey, and then take that into the charitable sector. We're talking huge numbers, and it's important that we keep that up. Without the volunteers coming forward to take on all the roles, and we're not just talking about people standing in charity shops. We're also talking about people taking on roles to lead charities. There are people out there with skills that would be really useful to charities, who can take on and lead them, not just charities, all non-profits, and make them stronger and more efficient. And I would certainly encourage anybody who's thinking that they might have a bit of time and some skills they could use to come forward. You will make a huge difference, without a doubt. It also is good for you. I mean, there's benefits documented on volunteering. It's good for your mental health. It's good for your physical health. It builds resilience by creating more friends and increasing your friendship group. So it's a win-win for everyone if you go out and volunteer. So definitely have a go.
It's really great. We are seeing quite a lot of businesses in the island now that are far more focused in their ESG to include giving staff the opportunity to volunteer. And I think what we want to try and do over the next year or two is to try and perhaps share even more opportunities to volunteer, but also for people to appreciate the skill set. So, for instance, we know there's quite a few charities that have spoken to us who are perhaps struggling with the opportunities that social media present. Perhaps that's because some of the members of the charities, etc., are probably not perhaps quite as IT savvy in elements, and you look and go, actually, a few hours of support from somebody who understands that position can make a huge impact for the charity, because it's a really cost-effective ways for them to engage with the wider community and to share information and support. So there are some great opportunities, but there is skill sets, and I think one of the things that we're seeing when you look at projects like the Duke of Edinburgh scheme, for example, which is very popular in the island with the schools, it does instill in there the importance of volunteering, and I think we're keen that continues, because the island has a great history, but I think you learn this and the benefits, the personal benefits of volunteering, you can learn from quite a young age by that experience and realise, actually, I felt good doing that. I'm not being paid to do something, but actually the rewards are so important. And that's something that we want to carry on instilling in the island, in our community, both young and old. And again, it's a great opportunity. Younger people working with older people. Perhaps you have conversations that you wouldn't otherwise have. So that's a great part of the volunteering element of this sector.
I think it's very important to touch on ways people can contribute to the third sector without donating money if they might not be in a financial position to do so. You touched on this a little bit earlier, Robert, but if you could elaborate on whether that's making it harder for charities to raise funds, and whether this is something we're seeing just locally, or if it's part of a wider trend.
There's a wider trend. As I say, the pandemic obviously stopped a lot of fundraising events, and the cost of living crisis I mentioned earlier has had an impact. And it's not just here. We're seeing that in the UK and wider positions. And that's why it's important that, yes, we do fundraising. We obviously look to government for certain elements of the charitable sector for the procurement, but this really is not about them necessarily giving a grant. It's about the fact that certain charities deliver services that otherwise the government would do, and generally there's quite a lot of evidence that actually the charities are delivering it at a far better cost point, and obviously there are a lot of KPIs and checks and balances there, but it is difficult. But the volunteering side has such value, but it is an area where I think we can do more, and I think there's an element of education. I think there's also a huge element of the charities have to make people aware of what they want and need in terms of skill sets, and ensure they create that environment and that position. And that's a challenge. In the past, we have it with some charities where they're still taking a similar approach than they've done for the last 20, 30 years. And the world has moved on. And this is why the sort of solutions like the Jersey Giving, like Volunteer JE, are important. And we are providing more and more training to the charitable sector, and this is one of the areas we want to do, of how do we get the message out there, how do we make it easier for people to see what skill sets. So there are always charities looking for treasurers, there's always charities looking for secretaries, but the social media side, somebody who's good to take photographs and points, because some smaller charities, they'd like to promote more and they can't necessarily afford a professional photographer to come and take shots, but actually someone go, do you know what, I could come in for 2 hours, take you some great shots from that event, which you can put on a post on social media, on Facebook, which will cost next to nothing. And people go, that looked like such a fun event. Only 30 people did it last year. Next year, 300 people might do it. And that might be because you gave an hour of your time to take some photographs and help with a couple of social media posts. So there's lots of opportunities. It is something that the sector has to do better at, and that's something we're keen to support. There are some of the charities are really good, and they've got teams on focus. They have huge amounts of staff because of the delivery. You look at the likes of Jersey Hospice as an example, which is a huge organisation that does incredible work. But obviously they have a team. They've got to put a lot of money in to keep that open year in, year out. But there are other smaller charities who don't have all that resource, but somebody giving of skill set. HR is another challenge. 1 or 2 charities have had challenges in dealing with HR, and we've seen a few of the HR suppliers here now start saying, well, look, we will give a certain amount of time, or we will run training courses to help the charities. That's a huge benefit, because 10 charities can come in and have a training session on a HR matter or data protection. That means they haven't had to spend money getting a consultant in on that point. And I think a lot more organisations are looking, going, actually, do you know what? Let's do that for the third sector, because it's really not costing a lot for them to deliver that sort of support. But the value times that amount of charities is huge. So it isn't always about the money. The skill sets and the communication really matters.
Following on from what Robert was saying about the effects across the UK, I'm as charity manager for Bode, I'm aware that we've had requests for funding that used to be covered off by things like children in need, and there's been a significant drop in that level of funding from outside the island. Up to about 60% on previous years. Wow. which is massive, and they've increased the complexity of applying. And I think it's up to us as an island to step forward and try and fill those, plug those holes where we can.
Because you mentioned that Jersey was very generous in terms of volunteering time. Do you think we're generous in terms of the sort of financial donations as well? Would you describe Jersey as like quite a generous place?
I would say yes, it is. We're actually running a survey at the moment to get data. We're running it on the same process that's used in the UK. So we will be able to make a comparison, and we'll be sharing that information in due course. But everyone is very generous, but not everyone can give at any point in time. And people can give in lots of different ways. Interesting point. For quite a number of years now, Jersey and the Channel Islands have not benefited at all from Children in Need, which used to provide funding. And obviously they focus on projects. And this is a challenge, because some of the sort of national programmes, they're not getting as much, or they're having to consider funding requests from organisations that have also suffered with pandemic, with cost of living, and we're probably viewed slightly lower down the programme. We don't fully understand why there's no return, because actually there's quite a lot of money that's fundraised in the island that goes to children in need, but it's not. There's no funding coming this way, but it does mean that we have to try and fill gaps. But as I say, it's interesting in support. We've got some organisations we're talking to about potentially supporting some additional property locations for charities to provide facilities and shared facilities. We're talking to charities about how they can work together and share resources. We're exploring all that, because we do know there isn't a bottomless pit of money there, whether it's from government or from people donating. So the charities are looking at AI. They're looking at opportunities of how do we work smarter, and we're trying to get them to work together, because there's often this image of it's a little charity that doesn't speak to anyone else. That's not correct. If you take homelessness as an example, which was a major issue for an island like ours, you'd sort of think there shouldn't be any homelessness, but there is, for a variety of reasons. And there are a number of service providers who deal with different aspects, because it's quite a complicated issue to address. But they do meet on a regular basis and with government and coordinate, and they're really efficient at what they're delivering. And the interesting bit with charities perhaps delivering, because sometimes people go, shouldn't government be delivering all of that? Well, sometimes you're working with people who perhaps struggle with dealing with authority and with government. And that's a position where charities can be very, very strong in delivering. Yes, government provides some financial support. I think they appreciate that. But sometimes they aren't the best person to deliver. And again, that's why there's a huge benefit for the charitable sector in being able to deliver that. And it's great when you can see people who do turn their lives around with support, people who've had addiction problems and points who've come into that sort of service, and they're then giving back to the community. I went end of last year to an event at Silkworth, and there were a couple of people there who have gone through the system, who hit rock bottom, and they accept there was positions of life choices that they have made and challenges they faced, but with the support of a charity, turning themselves around, now have engagement with family members, now employed. You just in awe, and especially when they are willing to share this to a room, it's phenomenal. And they point and go, it's because of this charity. And I think most people in this island will have charities that they're more keen to support, which is great because they've had a personal exposure or they know someone. And that's what they want. Maybe it's an element of being an island 9x5 that you see a lot more what's going on. It isn't a charity that's 50 miles down the road and you get to know people and that's involved. But we are so lucky to have that. And if the charities tomorrow went, we're on strike, we're not doing anything, trust me, within a week or two, we'd all really appreciate how much they do. It is so important to this island. But we are really lucky that so many people do volunteer and that so many people are generous with their time and their money.
Given some of the challenges we've spoken about with, the cost of living, you've mentioned that charities are having to get more creative when it comes to fundraising, and you mentioned a little bit about, exploring the possibilities of AI and also of more sort of skills-based or volunteering opportunities such as social media. But I wonder if maybe you guys could elaborate on that a little bit more about how charities are becoming more creative or imaginative in ways to fundraise.
That's an interesting one. I think the reality is that they are trying, and we're seeing different events. But I would say it's still elements of that is in its infancy. And I think, it's not, it's the same if you're looking at AI in businesses and looking how it develop, they're doing on that side. But Bex, you may have a bit more of a position with some of the sort of tech issues and points, because reality, in part, you're solving some of those issues to stop some of the heavy lifting that charities have had in the past.
Absolutely. So we're definitely seeing, I think fundraisers especially are becoming a lot more creative. Obviously, a lot of people do run marathons and things like that, so they might be doing London Marathon, and in that instance, we can help them set up their Jersey Giving pages so that they can raise funds, and we can put them all on a leaderboard. So with the Swim Marathon, we have an activity leaderboard where people can see whether it's their teammates, their classmates, who they're up against on the fundraising, and I think that's a bit of healthy competition. People want to be at the top of the leaderboard, and they want their team or their company to be at the top. So we do see things like that are really great for encouraging that fundraising. But then, fundraisers themselves are coming up with their own new challenges to raise extraordinary amount of funds. Pete Wright recently did 7 ultramarathons in 7 days in Jersey to raise money for 4 incredibly worthy charities, and he absolutely excelled in it. He did an incredible effort, especially on the days where the weather was absolutely dreadful, and he did have to do elements inside, which I think also would have been harder. So yes, we're definitely seeing that, and it's not, now we don't have to raise funds just for the events that are on the platform. We're seeing some charities are doing, they might do a trip away, so a sponsored trip away, so they might be doing things like climbing in Ecuador, or going to other countries to do different hikes and things like that. So, and then getting sponsored for that. And I think things like that, they're really, really inspiring for the people that are taking part, and then other people hearing their stories. And definitely the exposure really helps as well, getting those stories out into the community. And like you said, because we do see what's going on in the island, you hear a story about that person, you think, oh, that's incredible, I would love to donate to them. And I think you really feel the community impact, and those stories do hit hard. And I do think that has really helped with people giving and people wanting to raise money, because whether they've been affected by something that's meant that they've needed the charity, or they know someone, to raise funds for a charity that's on the island, I think is always something that's quite special.
I've seen some different sort of events develop, the likes of white collar boxing, white collar darts.
Yeah.
I heard that and got invited and thought, what the heck? Do you know what? I had a brilliant evening watching it, and it was just so much fun for everyone who was there, and I think that people are continually doing that. And some of the people listening to the podcast might go, actually, I've got a great idea for a fundraiser.
Yeah.
The difficulty in the past was actually, how do you organise it, and the amount of paperwork that was involved. And there is still some paperwork depending on what you need to do with approvals and elements, but a lot of it is a lot easier, in particular because of now with the Jersey Giving, that there is so much support. And a lot of charities, if you say, well, I'd love to support that charity and I've got this wacky idea, get in contact with them. Because they've probably got people who can help you to make that a reality. And you can look at something and go, I was part of that, or that was my little idea, and what a difference I've made. It really is important, and that's another form of volunteering. It's all important.
I think we also just need to realise that this whole cooperation around charities happens kind of organically as well. All the mass participation events that we have, the marathon, Battle of Flowers, Motor Festival, the triathlon, they're all supported underneath by volunteer organisations like St John Ambulance and Normandy Rescue. So you kind of got this organic growth within the third sector where they do rely on each other to be able to do certain things.
Yeah, definitely. So we're coming up to the festive season now. I wonder, is this a particularly important time of year for charities, and why is that the case, I suppose?
It's an important time of year for a variety of reasons. For quite a few charities, it gets to be a busy time of the year because we get to cold weather. So the elements of the food banks and elements like that will get very, very busy. For the elderly, it's not an easy time to get out and about. So again, a number of charities that are providing support. So it's a busy, busy time. But it's also a time when people do think about giving. And let's be honest, a lot of money sometimes gets spent on tat. And I think it's probably a time when perhaps, and that's something we're going to try and encourage, is maybe think about the charitable sector and giving in that position, or thinking about, well, my New Year resolution is I'm going to start giving a couple of hours a month of my time to a charity, because this isn't necessarily always going to be something that you have to do, days and days every month. There's a variety of positions. Just even give it a thought in terms of position. My first volunteering, I was in my mid-20s. I'd helped with sport clubs and elements where I competed, which I never looked at that volunteering because I competed and therefore I was giving something back. But I helped out at a club that was connected with Jersey Sports Association for the Disabled. And I went along. I'm not the most sporty person, but we were playing basketball and football and just socialising with some individuals. And we were told with some of them, this is the only time they get away from the facility they were living in at that point in time. And luckily, the world is moving on. But I had such fun. And I still see lots of those people around and say hi to them. And you appreciate how lucky you are and what you can give back. And the rewards I got from those couple of hours of an evening outweighed the time by a multiple of 10 or 20. And you just went, that was good. I felt good. Lovely people. And you see and you learn so much. So it's an important time. So I think, Christmas is a time for giving, but it'd be great if people can think about maybe giving, whether that's financial. If they can't financial, think about perhaps could I give a bit more of my time come 2026 to make a difference. That would be great.
Something we get regularly every year, volunteer.je, we get people phoning up literally a few days before Christmas saying, is there anything I can do? We do have a lot of people over here who are away from their family. They come over to the island to work and then they suddenly realise that they want to do something at Christmas. Unfortunately, it's too late because everyone's filled up. They've got themselves organised. And if you're going to go and do things like this, usually with vulnerable people, so you have to have DBS checks and all sorts of other things. So I really would suggest anyone who's thinking they might want to do something over Christmas to help out, do it now. Don't leave it till the 23rd of December because it's too late. Please do it now.
Coming up to Christmas, we do see lots of charities wanting to raise funds for different things. I know Jersey Hospice, they have a fantastic Santa Dash event at the beginning of Christmas. The National Trust and Hospice, they also do their 12 bays. So if you're brave enough to dip in the sea, I would rather give money than do that. Absolutely, there's no way. But yes, no, and I think now with Jersey Giving, it accepts both one-off and regular donations. So if, for example, you were thinking about giving someone a donation as a gift, you could say, I could donate to this charity for you for 12 months, and that could be £5 a month. Within 10 months, you've reached that £50 limit, which then triggers the Jersey gift support, which the charity can then use to gain another 25% on that. So I think things like that, even if you can't, because £50 is a lot of money to give at once, and a lot of people are very generous and they do that. But if you can't, then the act of giving regularly, that also works really well. And it £5 a month, I mean, a charity themselves would be able to tell you what that can do for their services and what they do in a practical sense. But I'm sure it would make such a big difference to so many different charities. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to think that making an £100 donation is the only way you can help out. You could be giving £5, you could be giving your time, or even just, as it has been mentioned, the promotion, the sharing, if you were going to do something, if you're going to take part in an event, or you see an event and you want to support it, just sharing it with your network can make such a difference. And especially in Jersey, where it is small, sharing that with your peers, with your colleagues, with your friends and family, different people can get more people involved. And I think that is something that we see is really underrated sometimes.
And just talking about sort of the different ways of giving, I know you mentioned that it doesn't need to be a big one-off gift, and smaller regular donations can make a real difference. But something I just wanted to touch on was legacy giving and what that actually means and how important it is really for local charities.
Yeah, legacy giving, generally we focus on individuals who leave something in their will towards a charity. Perhaps it's a charity that touched them during their life and supported it. And it's an important element for quite a lot of charities. The regular giving, and some organisations are setting up programs so you can give from your payroll, is important elements for the charities. But the legacy giving makes a real difference. In certain cases, some charities have been left property or an asset, and that can be obviously very, very useful, but obviously cash funds left, it's an important element in that process, and it is something we do encourage people to consider giving something back in their will. And I think a lot of people do like doing that as part of their planning of, yes, I'll leave a certain amount to my family, but perhaps I'll also consider one or two charities. And yes, unfortunately, some people perhaps weren't lucky enough to have a family, and they're looking, going, what happens with what's left? Legacy civic giving is a great opportunity to support. We're also seeing a growing interest in philanthropy, so wealthy individuals who are looking at how can I make a difference, and at the AJC we can help them either by holding and administering funds for specific charitable causes, or actually connecting them perhaps with charities that they're interested in supporting. Some individuals looking at the philanthropy side really want to give money and then that's it. Others want to be able to give more or to give other support. So there's a variety of ways of giving, but the legacy and the ongoing are both very, very important. The issue with the legacy, obviously there is a timing issue, and there's an element of a need now, which is why the regular giving, the £5 a month, it's a couple of posh coffees. In fact, probably not
one.
Even. So it's probably one now, especially depending what sort of milk you want and if you want a shot at the side. But you've got to allow, at the end of the year, there's an extra 25% being topped on. That's huge for the charities, because if most people were able to do that, or everybody who comes into town and works in a finance company and grabs that coffee, maybe on a Friday, go, you know what, I'll have the one for the machine at work, and that'll go towards, £5 or £10 a month. But if enough people do that, that's a huge amount of additional money that's coming in every month to support charities. And you can choose the charity because of the Jersey Giving Solution now. Charities and clubs and organisations that make a difference in Ireland, you can choose who you want to support, or you can look, the Association of Jersey Charities, we collect funds which we then distribute to charities who apply for grant funding and support. So, there are a number of options there, but we'd like people to consider that. And I think what we're seeing now is more opportunities because we're moving to a cashless society. And for some charities, that's a challenge because actually it's been the buckets and those elements, and that's not going. So you have to do things in a different way. Now, for some people who are treasurers of charities, that's nice because they're not spending their entire Saturday and Sunday counting 10p's and 5p's, and I remember doing that. In fact, when I was first doing it, there was even 2p's coming in. Where now, actually, it's all electronic and you can do it that way. And we're used to that now. You know, the days of minimum spends before you can use a card are gone. But you have to have that technology. And now there's a solution on Ireland that's very cost effective and a team that are so supportive of the sector and helping charities. And if there are any charities or clubs on the island who haven't got involved yet, please find out about the giving opportunity here that Beck's been referring to, because there's a great team there who are willing to support. And it's the same, you know, if you need assistance in the volunteering, then, you know, contact Volunteer JE because they're there to support. There's these organisations, and this is, we're one huge family in terms of the charitable sector and what we want to achieve for the island family, for the community, and we do work together. Sometimes people go, oh, there's too many charities, and they don't work together. That's incorrect. Lots of charities work together. Yes, there are quite a lot of charities. You know, you've got the PTAs for the different schools. Well, they've all got different positions. Some have different focus and solutions, but they do work together. They're not duplicating large amounts in points. And certain charities attract individuals because of a personal connection, and they work incredibly hard, and the value of that time and the volunteering is important. But there are so many people here helping the sector develop, and I know we're trying that, Association Jersey Charities, of how do we make a difference, how do we help develop and training and corporate governance and the issues, because again, that's another issue. Certain funders and businesses who are looking money in do have certain expectations now, which is perhaps different from the days where it was, oh well, I know that person, so I'll make a donation to that charity. A lot of businesses now have owners who go, well, why did you do it to that charity, and how do we know they're delivering, etc., etc. So again, we're having to help charities to be able to respond and provide that information so they can attract the funding. So some of the larger sponsors and points, that's been a marketplace that has reduced. There are a number of sponsors. We've seen some businesses unfortunately fold who actually were really supportive of charities. Some businesses change hands and the new owners aren't interested in giving back to the community in the third sector in that way. And that's been another challenge over the last few years, because the cost of living crisis does affects everybody who lives in the island. It affects the charities, but actually businesses have suffered as well. And on the back of that, one of the things that has gone is charitable giving from some businesses. It's had to go. Hopefully in time that will come back. But we have seen that, and the charities are having to find other ways to fill those gaps.
Do you think charities do enough to really show the impact they're having on the island and the value they add to the community, or do you think there's more that could be done?
I'll give you a simple answer. No. A lot of charities do give information and points, but I think there's a lot more that can be done and to educate. And I think that's where the social media and the technology now lends that, because the difficulty is a charity wants people to know what it's done to encourage more volunteers, to encourage more fundraising. But he doesn't want to spend a lot of money doing that, because it looks, every pound it spends on advertising and on positions, it's got to think, what's the return on that relative to what I can do within the community that I'm trying to help, whether that's individuals, animals, education, skills, whichever it is. That is a challenge. So it is something that I think we as a group need to work out how we do more. I know the Association of Jersey Charities needs to do more of that. We've reflected on that we need to raise our profile and how we help our members to do that. So there's definitely a lot more to be done. I think a lot of people do know and appreciate what charities do. And that a lot of that's word of mouth and people's experience. And if you've had a great experience with a charity, or you have a family member or friend and you think, wow, they've turned a corner because of this organisation, or have you seen the work that this organisation has done in environmental matters, whatever, if you feel that was good, tell someone about it. Share a post about it, because that will generate some more interest. Be our advocates for us, because that will help this sector.
There's something that the AJC's been supporting over the last few years, and that's the principle outcomes-based accountability, which is a very useful tool for trying to measure the impact you're having in a community. And the charities that have taken on that principle and gone to the training that's been provided by the AJC are the ones that are having this output of statistics and information that demonstrates the impact they're having in our community. And I think it'd be really useful if we could get more and more charities using those same principles. It also makes it easier for a funder's point of view, because you can look at them and you can look at them across a sector, an area of charities, and you can say, yeah, you really are making an impact in here, whereas this one over here maybe isn't quite so much. So it's really important that they develop it more.
Funders do have to make hard decisions, because there isn't always as much money as they'd like to support. We have at AJC sometimes where the lottery funding, we get less than half of what we used to, because we used to get all the lottery funds. We get half of the Jersey share, and the profits from the lottery are not as great as they were. So we have to make hard decisions that we can't always support every charity that makes a grant application. So the outcome-based reporting makes a difference, the data and elements. And for some charities that has been a transition from perhaps the way it's been in the past. But if there is less money going around, we have to go which is the right place and to support. So that can be challenging. We have to look at their reserves and what the proposals are and how they're working going forward. But we do try and provide training, same as we try and provide training on corporate governance, on data protection, all the issues, because a lot of the charities have to jump through a lot of the same hoops as a business, but we want them to try and do that without it costing too much. But they are incredibly professional. Again, sometimes you speak to people, oh yeah, it's charity, but they're a bit amateurish. Like, no, they're not. If you look what they're doing, and we've got charities here who are delivering on health issues and points. They have a very, very serious duty of care, which they take very seriously. And there are some incredible hard-working professionals, both paid and volunteers, in this sector that make such a difference. But yeah, in terms of for the funders, it can be a challenge in points. But I think it is improving as a sector. It's much the same as the promotion. We're doing great work, but there's more that we can do. But there's also a lot more that I think a lot of charities would like to deliver. We've seen one or two charities over the last few years where we've had to challenge them about the corporate governance, not because they were doing anything wrong, but they couldn't see that their passion alone was not enough to get funders across the line. Funders needed to understand, but how are you going to deliver that? How is that going to be sustainable? How are you funding future positions? And some of them originally were a bit sort of, it's important, it matters, we need it. Your enthusiasm is great, but that is not going to get you a check. And when they have come through some of the training, when they appreciate what is expected, and it's not rules for rules' sake, it's trying to help them to better communicate, to assess actually, are we trying to run before we're walking? And we've had that one charities going, that's a great idea, but you're probably a year or two away. You do that now, you probably will not be successful. So we try and give support. We also have a lot of charities which are perhaps further along, where their CEOs or staff will sit down with other charities to go, look, this is the roadmap. This is how it worked for us. So why don't you follow the same? So again, there's so much going on, whether it's from the AJC or in particular other charities supporting each other, because we all want success. We all want the best outcomes. So a lot of time and effort goes into that side. And what we have seen is that those charities that adopt that have come along at a huge rate of knots and are now delivering incredible services compared to where they were only 2 or 3 years ago. So there's a lot being done to support. And, you know, for us, it's the training, the governance, the support, the advocacy, being ready. You know, our power of partnership about procurement with the government, we're in regular meetings with the government and they are moving things forward to try and improve that process. But that was easier for us to do on behalf of the sector than for few charities to necessarily go and put their head above the pulpit and say, hey, we're not happy about some of these things. But then, you know, you've got solutions now on the financing, on the volunteering. So it's all coming together to make a difference.
Definitely. And just finally, really, what's one thing you'd like people listening to really take away from this conversation? Or do you have one particular message that you'd really like to emphasise?
Love a charity. Find a charity. Love it in whichever way you can, whether that is £1 or £1 million, whether that's a couple of days next year or, you know, 20 hours a month, whatever you can do. Love a charity. It'll make a difference.
Even throwing the smallest pebble into a pond will make ripples that travel. I would encourage everyone just to put their little pebble in the pond and get involved in any way you can, because it will make a huge difference to someone's life somewhere.
Jersey is an incredibly generous, friendly and warm place to be. I've never seen so much generosity quite like it, and you can really see that people care about the causes that are on Ireland and in the UK as well, that they may have either used or a friend or family have used. And I would say just get involved in the community, whether it's signing up for an event, being a volunteer at one of the events. The sporting events especially always need marshals. They need that help. And when the community comes together, it becomes an incredible, incredible thing. So, support your friends, sign up for events, become part of that community, and you'll see how much of a difference it really, really does make to the charity sector.
Definitely. And thank you so much for joining me. It's been great to hear, especially about all the different opportunities.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Bailiwick Podcasts. This episode was brought to you in partnership with the Association of Jersey Charities. If you'd like to donate, volunteer or share your skills, you can find more at jerseycharities.org/giving. Thanks again for listening.